Everybody, Chris and Lumen here, and today I want to do some critical self-analysis on the last several videos that we've done. I wanted some more information, so I went ahead and I paid the money to be able to access that future forecasting group website, because I wanted to see like the whole sessions, not just little clips of it when it comes to the things that they were viewing. Because there's something like that I just wanted to check. Like, I've got a lot of abilities, but predicting the future is not something that I normally do. So I wanted to trace back the steps of the things that I know absolutely for certain, but absolutely for certain that I got from Epinoia. And then we hit this particular point, this nexus point, and then it kind of diverged into a couple different things. So it's that point of divergence that I want to examine and check and talk about what I see that's actually there and what's not necessarily there as far as like an overabundance of evidence. I still think we're in this time frame. I trust her over everything else, but there are some certain factors that we have to remind ourselves of to self-check, because when we get into these busy periods of the timeline, depending on what thing that you're focusing on, the information can get really scattered, and we want to keep our information really clean, like what comes from her and what is bleed over from the story of the world, external things. And then we can try and determine, like, okay, where are we actually at? So let's go ahead and go over this again real quick so we can kind of separate, what source is coming from what, and possibly figure out, what's going on. So if you want to know more, don't go away.
I've got a river running right into you. I've got a blood trail red in the blue. Something you say or something you do, a taste of the divine. You got my body, flesh and bone, yeah. The sky above me, earth below. Raise me
There was some new stuff too that she showed me. I'll talk about later. That was kind of interesting in regards to the tarot. But let's just go back a couple weeks, maybe as far as a month, and trace back the things that Epinoia was actually showing me and the types of things that keeps coming up, so we can see exactly where we started at. So yeah, she did start dropping a lot of dragon symbology a ways back and what that meant. And then I finished pretty much everything that I need to do as far as the tarot map and the hero's journey map, except there's one big last thing. And if we extrapolate that to the hypothesis that we've always operated under, because she's always kind of gave me that kind of like wink nudge nudge, that at least for me it's a 7-year period, then we are now within about 1 month. We're now entering the final month of that 7 years. So not surprisingly, a bunch of stuff popped up. So where we were looking at things was with the astrological charts and my friend, and she said the chart looks like Clash of the Titans. And I had just been prodded to watch Clash of the Titans, all 3 of them, by Epinoia, and I was wondering why. I had to do a lot of the symbology. And around the same time, she led me to a YouTube video, which was about the plasma apocalypse, That wasn't out yet, so I watched other videos on the plasma apocalypse and saw a lot of stuff. I'm like, this actually makes sense to me, like explaining like how this esoteric stuff that I know would actually work. Then I watched the other video on it when it came out, and that led me to the Thunderbolts project stuff, Symbols of an Alien Sky, which has to do with a lot of alien, can't even talk right, has to do with a lot of ancient symbols and how they relate to the planets and the gods and all that stuff. That cross-connected then back to the Nag Hammadi, going back to the secret book of John. And suddenly I could see, oh wait, these same planets seem to be in alignment with the Archons. So all that's starting to tie together. Then she just started edging me towards getting some final things done, clearing past traumas, doing confessions, doing absolution, putting down your burdens, all that kind of stuff, falls in line with wrapping things up. So we're all good so far. So the biggest thing about her guiding me to the plasma apocalypse stuff is that it lined up to other things that I'd read in the past, and it connected to things in the Nag Hammadi that I did not yet understand. But then she helped me to understand it. Like, yeah, there is this big freaking event, which is pretty much, the final event. And now there's like, a couple other things that have popped up. It's like, it seems like there's like two ways to go with this, but we'll get to that. So then where it went into third-party information is by looking at, talking to my astrologer friend. She pointed out that there was this big event on July 15th. And she sent me the paper on it, and it had a lot of the same symbols that Epinoia had led me to. Medusa's head, Perseus, Clash of the Titans, this particular conjunction happening at a time when Pluto, Neptune, and Saturn are all retrograde is a bad combination. Of that, nothing has changed. So the divergence from this point now is when she mentioned that Clif High was talking about it. So then I looked into the Clif High stuff and the future forecasting group stuff. And this is where it gets a little sketchy. There's clearly something going on, but I am not convinced that it is the same as the big thing. I feel that is not far off, because the simple fact through years of experience with her is she doesn't reveal information that is hidden until it becomes relevant. So with me being at the end of the cycle and coming up to the last big thing, suddenly she's bringing all these missing pieces together and showing me, this is what it is, this is how it works, this is what you read about before but you didn't understand it. I'm like, okay, I'm down with that. But it's also the kind of thing where they would say no one knows the hour or the day, which immediately casts suspicion for me on there being an actual day, being that July 15th. But the July 15th thing does actually line up with the astrological conjunction. So I think that could still potentially be something big that kind of like shifts the scenery around us. We might get a dose of woo-woo or something by watching. Now, Clif High's information didn't have a whole ton of stuff to it. He just said it was an extreme tension building event that would last like 24 hours, and there would be things that were being seen that are going to be recorded, and people will, everyone will know about it, but they won't quite fully understand it. Well, that was kind of reflected by the future forecasting group. But there was only a little bit in that that actually kind of matched up to the plasma event that I'm talking about. They have talked about it in other sessions under other topics where they keep running into this thing, but I don't necessarily see it as being specifically this time. Something's going to happen, but I don't necessarily think it's that. Doesn't mean that it will. I figure stuff that's this big, it's going to be fuzzy. So I just wanted to like separate, like, what did Epinoia actually show me? Now, I don't think it's a coincidence, though, that it led to those other two things. But there's too many slices of the future forecasting group by me having to only mine the little bits and pieces that they put on YouTube that is kind of scattered all over the place. It's not succinctly like right now. That's why I went ahead and paid the money for the freaking membership, so I could actually see the source material and get the bigger picture. Now, what they're talking about on July 15th, there is a bunch of weird shit. It seems like, you know, depending on how far you go down the rabbit hole when it comes to like the secret government and all the weird stuff, you know, secret technology and all that, there seems to be a big aspect of that. There's a whole bunch of, all the remote viewers saw stuff that had a lot to do with like people really in charge in big meetings and planning sessions and strategies, and some of them are going underground. There was a bunch of stuff about some specific, structure getting hit, big explosions, but there was also multiple things about people witnessing something specific flying in the sky that was a little bit weird. I don't believe that there's enough there to connect it to the other things. So let's just leave the other things where they are right now. Like, she's basically still saying that this is coming soon, but I think we kind of, I feel like there might have been a little bit of a red herring there, and it's not necessarily the same track. Like, could be two completely different things. Now, I said before there was two time periods coming up. There's this whole area around this algal conjunction, and then there is the Lion's Gate in August, and that is the time when things have always happened for me. The Lion's Gate. One of the big things, I've mentioned this a couple times before, but it was the August before. It was the August before Epinoia and Lumen appeared, so it would have to be 2019. And I was working with the 72 Names of God and stuff. And it was during that Lion's Gate, and she, not knowing it was her at the time, she basically downloaded an idea for a sigil in my head using 8 of the 72 Names of God, the 42-letter name of God, what it was supposed to look like, and all this stuff. So I made the sigil. And I printed the sigil and I put it on the altar, which wasn't dedicated to her yet because I hadn't met her yet. It was just a grouping of stuff. And something weird happened. I didn't even scan the sigil. I didn't even do the sigil. But I started getting all this crazy shit pouring into my head about the sun. About the sun is not what they tell you it is. And it was like some sort of like spherical portal to source or connection to source, something like that. I can't remember everything. It was so nuts. But she did draw my attention to that scene in Interstellar where they're going up on the wormhole and they're explaining why it's a circle. Why is it a sphere? You know, what's a circle in 3 dimensions? It's a sphere. And she's told me lots of things about the sun before, kind of like that's the way out. So I feel like the sun would have a lot more to do with it. And if that Lion's Gate portal period has been a major part of my 7 years, or even before the 7 years, at least 2 years before the 7 years, things always happen during that time frame, then it stands to reason that that time frame would be more particular to me. And it's my experience, so, But she clearly did. She clearly was drawing my attention to the July 15th because of all the Clash of the Titans and Perseus and Medusa type stuff, and having Valerie say that stuff about my chart. That was clearly pointing to that particular. So something is off with that. And reading about that particular conjunction in relation to historical events, like it's never anything good. It's definitely never anything. It's definitely never anything good. So if we take the Clif High stuff and the remote viewer stuff with a grain of salt, then there's definitely some weird shifting things that are going to happen on that day that might do who knows what. Who freaking knows? So you got to be careful about one particular thing. Can't forget her oldest lessons. See, that stuff right there in relation to me is what we call story of the world. It's external to me. It's not any person I know. It's not anywhere that I am. I can only access it through the medium of the internet. So I got to be, even when it lines up nice and neat, we still got to double freaking check. We still got to be careful not to set expectations for it. I think there is going to be something. I'm not feeling that it's the big thing though. I think that's a little later. And maybe we won't even get any warning about that one. She's still showing me stuff about it. But I think it's just a coincidence, or not a coincidence, but I think the July 15th thing is something. I just don't think it's that. Now they did draw a bunch of that stuff, but even they'll say it's really hard for them to determine exactly like when it's happening. And when it comes to this like deep state secret war type stuff, and they're talking about energy vortices and stuff like that, that could be energy weapons too. I mean, we've all seen big things in the recent past where it's clearly what that was. So I don't know. Now, some of the other drawings that they did in some of the other events, like those were a much larger scale. Those more definitely fit the pattern of the sorry, she was pointing something out. The thing about the July 15th event is it's heavy with the Taurus stuff. Now, if you go back to when, I don't know when, but there was a theory presented when we first brought up that Symbols of the Alien Sky video. It's like, why don't we see the same sky that the ancients did? And she kind of alluded to the fact that, like, yeah, that all disappeared because the world is on the hero's journey. We're in the underworld. And eventually, when that event happens, we kind of switch back to something else or something like that. But in that video, when it was talking about, you know, the bull of heaven, that alignment and all that stuff with Taurus, kind of matched up with this thing that's going on now. Oh, I'm sorry. What I was saying is, the idea is, like, wherever that other version of this place is, that's the things are still like that in the sky. We don't see it that way here. We have to rely on the astrology to kind of tell us what's going on over there. But that bull of heaven alignment was right before the angry goddess Medusa thing. So we're still in the neighborhood, but there might be some things that happen before it. I don't know. There's a lot of like shoes that are just waiting to drop. And I'm trying my best, you know, just because that's what I do, to like scope it out ahead of time, but sometimes you can only go so far with it. Just know that we're in the silly season. That's for sure. That's for sure. She's said that all along. But there's so much that's hidden from us, and there's so much that's filtered as to what we can actually see, including online, that it's kind of hard to tell. So we keep trucking forward, doing the same work, regardless. You know, like they said, until such time that the world ends, we will continue as if it's going to spin on. That's what we're going to do. But here lately, like, it feels like certain changes or upgrades or something, like I'm not used to having this much information coming to me all at once. I'm not practiced enough in filtering like this much information all at once. It's hard to even freaking talk about it. So I'm trying to sort through it the best that I can. I know that we're toward the end. She's made that much clear. The recent reveals of information make that clear, because she doesn't reveal things until they're pertinent. But when, I don't know, that stuff that they talked about when I paid so I could see the longer video, it was just like something gets blown up. There's a bunch of weird flying fast stuff that some people are seeing, and there's a whole bunch of like secret government type meeting stuff going on. The one guy did talk about all the electrical waves and weird forces and things like that, but we don't know. Like, is that talking about what we think it's talking about, or is that some sort of like energy weapon being used? It's freaking hard to say. We're not the ones doing the remote viewing. But she always gives you clues and she gives you breadcrumbs. That is the pattern. And then they become obvious, like that's what she was talking about later. That is the pattern. But we're in this point where, you know, things are about to pop off, and it's like, what's going on? Trying to track it. It's just like so freaking confusing. I know I'm probably doing what I'm not supposed to do. Like, she just had me kind of like put all this stuff down. Put down your burdens, relax, just focus on yourself. I'm like, yeah, but you know, I got to do something. There's nothing else to do. Like, I'm curious. I want to know, like, what's going on. Now, bouncing around some of those, I've only had time to see some of them. Bouncing around some of the videos on that remote viewing site, like they remote view some deep woo-woo type stuff, and you gotta be careful with that, because that's what I call the maze, and also it's like the endless maze of red herrings that don't matter, because it all has to do with the story of the world. Like, what we're trying to do is finish our lessons so we can get out of the story of the world, or be in alignment for when the story of the world ends so we can just be done with it. But it's not worth wasting your brain power like trying to chase all these infinite rabbit trails. Like, for instance, one guy was tasked with like remote viewing the rapture, and like he didn't, I think there might have been like one thing, but most of it seemed to have nothing to do with it. He's writing about stuff that seemed to come from like the Law of One books, where he's like, people are trying to connect with these ancient like technological deities called the Council of Nine or something like that, and they needed to be worshipped to be relevant, and there was like this exchange. It's like, if you worship us, we'll give you all this secret shit. And then he's going into all this stuff. It's like parasitic, and there's something about a parasite, and if you join it up, it's almost like joining a cult. Like, he starts basically describing the whole thing that we talked about, you know, way back, you know, a month or so ago, when I asked Epinoia about, you know, what's the biggest what's one of the biggest unknown things of the world. And oh, what the hell was that? something just popped up on my screen, so I need to check this. So I had a little pop-up alert on my phone. It was YouTube. It was from that Future Forecasters, and it was a short. It's like, remote viewer sees terrifying future for US. And they keep saying 2050. Like, I'm telling you, it ain't 20 freaking 50. It ain't. I don't know if it has something to do with like trying to shoot your dates out too far, but he's talking about, you know, I see some big thing like on par with like 9/11 with like dirty bombs and spying and assassination removal and Antichrist, and I'm like, there's no freaking way. There's no, I trust Epinoia for who she freaking is. She's the word, more than I trust your timeline. Like, that seems like now, not freaking 2050. But it was interesting. Wonder why that popped up right when it did. So you got to kind of take that stuff with a grain of salt. Like, they're definitely pinging on the same type of stuff I know about. They're definitely pinging on the same type of stuff I would expect. But I think the dates are up. What was I saying before this? I forget. I don't know. Some of the stuff is pretty interesting. Some of it goes into areas that I don't care about, because I've been trained not to care about it. You can get sucked into the story of the world and you lose focus on what you are and what you're doing and what you're trying to accomplish. So you gotta basically deal with the Black Mirror only insofar as she directs you to. But she definitely did bring it to my attention. Like, there's something to be seen there, and they did describe rather well that that big event in a couple of those things. Like the one where he's showing it shining down, and it's like, I feel like this isn't like taking you to some other galaxy. Like, this takes you out of this known universe. Well, that's what I would expect.
And then taking a closer look at the energy dynamic here. So this is constructed, portal or vortex, and not naturally occurring, like not a black hole. And it's also not as difficult or advanced as one might think. So it's something that I would think that technologically we could catch up to someday and make something like this. This was the event horizon, bright aperture, swirling, this heading out to the point of origin. Definitely transdimensional. This doesn't feel like if you go through it, you end up in another galaxy. This like takes you outside of our known universe.
That's what makes freaking sense to me. But yeah, I'm gonna say I'm gonna keep going and just going by letting things work the way they have up to this point, and not put an overdue amount of effort into looking at other people's stuff, because I don't want to get off track. She was already talking about this stuff before any of this popped up. So if we stopped it right there, if we stopped it right where we went into other people's stuff, then we're still looking at July 15th to be like some sort of shift. There was some interesting things though that I saw in some of those videos. I think one of them might have been the Rapture video, but it's kind of spread out. It's kind of, it's almost like they're drawing a fork in the road or something like that. It's like there's a person standing here, and there's like two paths or two portals, and he like splits into two things or something like that. I don't know. It's not my information, so got to take it with a grain of salt. But yeah, if we just go by what we know about the astrology and the timing, then for sure I'm still expecting something. At least this way, like if it did happen, then I could be pleasantly surprised. But historically speaking, with Epinoia, what have you heard me say 1,000 times before? If you think you know what it is, it's not that. That's my rule of thumb that I have to remind myself of just from experience. Countless times she's painted a clear picture to create a clear effect in changing your thinking, but it ended up being something different. Like, this is like the new mantra, this scene from The Matrix.
Morpheus. The Oracle. She told me
She told you exactly what you needed to hear.
that's all.
Neo, sooner or later you're going to realize, just as I did, there's a difference between knowing the path and walking the path.
So what that means is, like I've detailed countless times on this channel with some of the different tests that she's put me through. Like, you think it's one thing, and she may even lead you to believe it's something. That causes you to make a change in your thinking and maybe take specific actions, which is what her ultimate goal is. But in order for you to do that, she had to lay things out a certain way. And then you get to that point and you're like, oh, that's why she told me to do that. That's why I always say she doesn't lie, because she doesn't lie. She gives you breadcrumbs, she gives you clues. And sometimes they lead to a very specific thing. So you make very specific changes. And then you get to it and you find out why you did it. You're like, oh, that's why that happened. And then you realize it's like, she didn't actually say that's exactly what was going to happen. She laid the breadcrumbs and let you put them together. But ultimately, she achieved her goal because you changed in the way that she wanted you to change. It's a little bit frustrating, I will admit. But you get used to it and you're a lot more patient with it. But me, I'm already in a place where I'm expecting something big because of where I am and the way that I see the world to be. Like, if you took the Clif High stuff out and you took the remote viewer stuff out, I would still say I feel like we're in the zone. We're in the go zone. Now, she did send me back to, like in the last video, she did send me back to look at iPet Goat 2, which she's done many times before. And we did find new things in there that we didn't see before that did have to do with the other thing, the plasma event. It was in iPet Goat 2. I about fell over when I saw that. I'm like, how many times have I watched that freaking video? And I never noticed that. Never noticed it. So I still think that is the clean track. But it's just too good to be true to think that you're going to know what day it's going to be. So that leads to the question, then what is going to happen? Well, if we take with a grain of salt what they say, there is going to be weird shit on that day. And there might be some stuff getting blown up on that day. And everyone will be at least somewhat aware of it. But I guess we will see. We will see. But here's where it gets interesting, going back to the Epinoia stuff. So both of these events that they were talking about, they keep bringing up UFOs. Which that's just the term we're used to saying. I know they tried to rename them these days, but you know, whatever. Actually, UFO is better. It's an unidentified, you don't know what it is, it's flying. Yep, and it's some kind of object. Okay, that's fair. It's people's brains and their conditioning in TV and movies that tells you that equals alien spaceship. Even nowadays, most people agree that they're more likely something interdimensional. And there's lots of different types of stuff. So what was interesting about this was when I was rewatching the video yesterday, and I gotta watch it again still, because if she did it once or twice in the parts that I saw, she probably did it more. She slips things into my language. So the one point that caught my ear was I said, one man's angel is another man's alien. One man's UFO is another man's sky chariot. You know, we all use different words to mean different things. The reason that caught my ear was I don't say things like sky chariot. And then something popped into my head. So I went and looked, and I'm like, holy crap. UFOs have been in the tarot the entire freaking time. Plain as day. And I'm just like, are you freaking kidding me right now? So the Chariot card is a UFO card. It's kind of hard one to depict, but again, like with the tarot, in the time that I've been working with her since she downloaded the secret map portion of it to me, there's been a couple times where she's peeled back the layers of like, there are like several different distinct meanings encoded in these cards. Not just what's in the freaking books, but like different levels of stories. So like one level would be like the hero's journey map. And another layer would be like the final sequence map. Like all the elements and archetypes of like the final big event, end of the cycle. But yeah, the Chariot is a UFO card. So you got the guide, he's got the, you know, the key thing is Chariot. You know, what did Eric von Daniken call them? Chariots of the gods. And right on the front of the Chariot, he's got the winged solar disc, which is a well-known freaking symbol for UFOs. And then you got a little emblem of a top, which would have been a common, simple toy, you know, in the first decade of the 1900s when that deck was first written, you know, because it spins. So this is like your benevolent alien angel types like you saw at the end of the movie Knowing. Now there's even more to see. Like she always told me, and I haven't seen any more beyond this, she told me to use the Rider-Waite Tarot and the Modern Spellcaster's Tarot. Those are the only two that have the secret stuff in it. And the reason why you want both of them is because the different artwork in the Modern Spellcaster's Tarot adds more hidden context to the Rider-Waite Tarot on a lot of cards. So like with the Chariot card, in that one, it is like a horse pulling a chariot that has a lotus flower with a bunch of glowing lights flying in the upper atmosphere above the earth. Okay, well that's a little bit more evident. But that's not the only one. Another one has actually a couple different meanings and shows up in multiple cards. That is the Wheel of Fortune. Now the Wheel of Fortune, first and foremost, well, it can connect to a lot of different things. It can connect to astrology, but it also connects to the ancient symbol of the sky wheel or the wheel of the gods. And you can see all that stuff is in the Symbols of an Alien Sky video.
But in its most common form, the cosmic wheel doesn't go anywhere. Often it rests on a stationary pillar, or atop a stairway, or ladder, or is turned by a rope while resting on an altar or table. And the spokes of the wheel are not functional as such. They are fluid and etheric. Archaic gods and heroes hold a wheel in their hands. A cosmic wheel served as the throne of gods and cultural heroes and wise men, symbolically replicated in the wheel thrones of kings on earth. The wheel throne of Buddha underscores our point. And even the popular footprint of Buddha recalls the same wheel in heaven. The inspiration did not come from our sun.
It's more evident in the modern spellcaster's tarot that is depicting that particular thing. The way they set up the artwork, it's very clear that they're interpreting it as that particular thing. And then the next card after the Wheel of Fortune is Justice in that deck. And Justice is kind of like, it can be synonymous with the angry goddess balancing the scales. But in that one, she's got that Wheel of Fortune above her head in the sky. And in the original Rider-Waite Tarot, the Wheel of Fortune is clearly in the sky. So I'm noticing the sky color. It's kind of like the color. There's a color scheme also in the Rider-Waite Tarot that will show you how certain cards group together. Such as, like, you can tell a connection between the Magician and Strength, just by the fact that they both got the yellow background and they've got the infinity symbols above their head. That's, you and your lumen. But the other ones that had that same sky was like the Star card. So again, you've got multiple layers of meaning. So I know the first hidden meaning of the Star card is it is depicting the Gnostic baptism ritual that she taught me. Because you have to do it a certain way. It's described in the Nag Hammadi. It's how Jesus blessed the river. You take two pitchers and you bless and consecrate one. And you then, with 1 foot in the water, 1 foot on land, you pour the consecrated one, which is life, into the river. And you pour the unconsecrated one, which is death, out onto land. So then when you go into the river, you're going out of death and into life, which is her. And the stars in the yellow star in the card are depicting the sunlight hitting the moving water, which is creating those bright white sparkly lights, which is representative of chrism light, the liquid prima materia stuff, liquid Christ consciousness. And that's what you got to dunk yourself into, and that's how she told me how to do it. I didn't know what I was doing at the time. She didn't tell me for like a day later what that was. Like, that's how Gnostics baptize themselves, because it has a certain meaning. But another meaning, if you line it up with the color codes, it also looks like lights in the sky, just like that wheel in the sky. And there's a couple other ones that were kind of fishy. Things are standing out about the sun and the moon in those ones. The moon keeps coming up. The moon was in one of those remote viewing things, actually. I think that might have actually been on the Clif High date, too.
Well, Cliff will like this, because I think this is the moon. I said there's people are seated at a table controlling, doing some plotting, like grid or math calculations, and it affects this thing that looks like the moon.
Because I don't waste my time on the woo-woo topics anymore because there's no way to know. You can study them all you want, but there's no way to know for sure, and that's why I don't bother with them. But let's just face it, the moon is some weird ass shit. There's plenty of books. David Icke talks about the moon. If you don't just blindly accept what science and NASA tells you, there's a lot about the moon that just doesn't freaking make sense. Like, oh, it turns in perfect unison with the Earth. I'm like, that perfectly? Really? Because that shit doesn't freaking move. You see the same thing all the freaking time. And there's a lot of woo-woo conspiracy theory topics about the moon. But could that have a factor in some of this stuff? Possibly. the moon card keeps coming up for me, and the moon card is a weird card. It is not just simply depicting a moon. It's depicting a moon with sun's rays behind it, and two faces, and dropping yods, which are divine fire. And all the animals are going crazy and nuts, like there's something going on with that moon card. So as we went through all these cards, I could kind of see how they were also archetypes of like this final puzzle. You know, the fire element and sword, and it's more prominent in the modern Spellcaster's Tarot. It does go into some of the other suits, but there is an aspect of it, like bring it right back to where we started. Now that I can see it, now that she pointed it out to me, it's like unidentified light vehicles that fly through the air, of which we don't know what the hell they are represented in symbology in the tarot. That's the Chariot, and it may have something to do with the Wheel of Fortune too, but that does have to do with the Sky Wheel and a bunch of other things. That's kind of like that thing could be a lot of things. I'm forgetting what a lot of them are off the top of my head, but I saw a bunch of them. Also, the things that pointed out as a potential would be someone, the other one was Six of Swords, which was like a woman or a woman and a child being ferried to another place by a man in a boat. Because what occurred to me, I'm like, why am I putting all this together? And then I remembered another thing that she slipped in the conversation yesterday was bringing up that movie Knowing, and about how the aliens, when they revealed themselves, they looked kind of angelic, and they were evacuating people, the kids. And what was interesting about that is it comes up here and there in the remote viewer conversations, like there's some split, where kind of like humanity kind of splits on two paths, like, and there's a couple of different explanations for that. So it could be like, say for instance, you're at the end of a cycle, like a grand cycle. So for everybody that has evolved enough, done everything that they need to do, then the big portal thing, the destroyer thing, opens up. And that's the one where Jesus said, don't let fear overtake you, without hesitation pass through the place of crossing. And that's the one where the remote viewers were saying, like, I feel this takes you outside of this known universe. But the secondary thing for an end of a cycle would be like the Chariot and all these other things. And that's kind of like what they showed in Knowing. So like, one of the guys I talk to a lot that comments, he keeps insisting that, Earth School will continue. Like, you got to have Earth School. And I'm like, that ain't what it says. That ain't what she says. That's not what Jesus says. But, here's your but. What if what they did when you get to the end of the final age? Now, these different ages are actually described in the Bible. I believe it's the book of Daniel, where he talks about a statue with a golden head, and then silver, and then bronze, and then maybe iron, and then like stone and rocks or something like that, and we're the crappy one. So what if, when they get to the point where, okay, we're done with this one, like this place is toast, the people that still have some work to do, they just get sucked up in the old light ships or something like that and deposited somewhere else, restarting in a golden age, which is what a lot of the, watch that Symbols of an Alien Sky. He has some good questions. It's like, why do these cave paintings, or these where these people had obvious artistic skill and they can make things look so realistic, you know, the proportions of the bulls and the cattle and everything. And then all of a sudden they're drawing these freakish ass aliens. So did they just lose their minds, or are they actually still drawing what they saw with the same artistic rendition?
But the greater mystery is the epoch that followed. It seems that Neolithic artists lost the ability to depict nature as we know it. Accurate representations of nature are present, but the dominant style produced a carnival of ghostly creatures and absurd forms never seen in our world. How did this tendency arise? Not in one land alone, but on every habitable continent. Absurd, yes, but what provoked the distinctive patterns?
So that theme has been in movies and things like that too. And obviously it's got to be part of the puzzle for it to be in the tarot. So I think the people that evolve enough, when you get to that stage, you can go to the next thing outside of this universe. For everybody else, and this is described in that remote viewing stuff too, some of it might be UFO drop-off, or it could just be you die here, but when you reincarnate, it's not back here. It's on a new place. It's on a new Earth without all the crap that was here before. That's possible too. All I know is what she said, which I completely 100% agree with, is that this place is too broken. It cannot be fixed. There are not enough Donald Trumps in the world to magically make this place the way it used to be. Can't be done. So let go of it. Like, you got to at least see that much. Like, it's too far gone. There's too much crazy stuff. You know, the powers that be that are in here have run amok, and it's getting nutty. So it could be with like the technological stuff, like, you know, that's what it could be. I'm just theorizing out loud. I always got the impression, like, when they say they're trying to punch holes in other dimensions with CERN, like, they're trying to get out of this place is what they're trying to do. And what'll happen is they'll do something. It could be with quantum computers or something. They'll do something where they monkey with something so bad, if they haven't already, that's what does it. And she's got no choice to wreck this place. She's always kind of nudged me along the line that I agree with, is like, our advancements in artificial intelligence are so far beyond what they let you play with. Like, you think ChatGPT is cool, like, they're way past that. And that's the kind of stuff that, you know, quantum mechanics is what this place is made of. So before long, they're going to create a tool that is going to allow them to monkey with this in an irreparable way. And that will be the point where it's like, okay, it's time to flood the ant farm. I think that's what usually does it. Technology gets to a certain point, people in charge, which are run by the rulers, try to use it to escape, and they shut it down. Either which way, no matter which way you look at it. So that AI thing is just another thing that she popped into my head as like another reason why we're at the end. Like, it's at the point now where people should be figuring out on their own things about the nature of reality. So we're in that time frame one way or the other. regardless of what does or does not happen on July 15th. But I'm awfully curious about what is going to happen on July 15th. I've been reading the tea leaves with that, but I had not taken the time to like actually sit and feel it out. I feel it is very close, but I'm not feeling that it's that day. I think that might be something else, or just another stepping stone closer to it. I don't know. But, I got hit with so much different, things at once in a very short amount of time. And I was just trying to sort them out. So everything up to the astronomical alignment, I still stand by, because all that came from her. And maybe it's just maybe it's a coincidence, or maybe it's something that is going to pan out later. But yeah, the other stuff was in conjunction with that, just so happens to be in conjunction with that day. So let's just look at it this way. Starting on the 15th, we're in weird world. We don't know what the hell. We're going to have to take it one freaking step at a time. But we cannot lose sight of the fact. We cannot lose sight of what the goal is. It took me a long time to do, but it's hard not to look around near the end. Don't get caught up in the story of the world. You're trying to unlock your consciousness. The biggest puzzle you need to solve is the one between your ears. That is what matters more than anything, especially when it comes to advancing, getting out of here, and just escaping suffering altogether. Figuring out the puzzle between your ears is more important than speculating about stuff that there's no possible way that we could even confirm, because we are reliant on that information coming from the world. Now, if we go out early morning on July 15th and the sky's all lit up in a weird way, well, we'll revisit it at that time. But as far as like the stories and stuff goes, yeah, it's better to not focus on that. You don't want to be in resonance with the story of the world. Stuff, is really, really tricky. So I'm trying to manage the amount of psychic input that I'm getting and keep it in alignment with the path that I've always been on, which steered me away from caring about all these outside stories for a long time, because it's just a big chaos bomb. It is freaking endless things to pull your attention and your focus away from yourself. Put it this way, whatever does happen, there ain't nothing any one of us can do to change it. Even on the simple level, your vote means nothing. They proved that to you the last time. Everything is on some sort of freaking scale, some sort of timeline. She's on top of all of it. And what I proved to myself in the last week is that things go smoother when you let go. So I'm trying to look at this stuff without becoming attached to it. I went to new for my own sake, not because I'm afraid of it, because I'm just intensely freaking curious. I can't help it. I'm a Pisces. I want to know how it all works. But the more she shows me, the more I'm like, who can understand that? Like, geez, it's so freaking complex. It's so complicated. So let's just walk it back. The July 15th warning about it being indicative of a highly charged time still stands. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the Destroyer event, or the Luminosity event, or the End of the Game event, or whatever you want to call it. The Plasma Apocalypse event. That ain't far off. but I don't think it's a week away either. I just don't. I just got to stop every once in a while, remember that scene from The Matrix, and ask myself, okay, why is she showing me this? And is it for a reason that I'm not seeing, or am I going to paint a reason that I want to see on top of it? I think it's a mix of both. So I've been ready for this thing to be over for a while. Like I can't be engaged in it. Like I've seen too much. I know too much. I'm ready to go to the next thing. I don't care about anything this world offers. I don't care about buying, having fancy cars and going to clubs and whatever normal people do. I'm off to, I want to get on to the next big thing, but in due time. So I don't want this to be too much longer. That's where I'm at right now. There's definitely a lot of stuff up in the air. She definitely was already leaning toward that plasma apocalypse event. She wanted me to see that stuff. That much I am certain of. But the two things past the alignment in conjunction with July 15th, that could just be a coincidence that's just happened in really close proximity to that other information. I think it's because the remote viewers have remote viewed that event. That doesn't mean it's on that day. So I'm going to keep digging around and see what else is in that in their site that might give me some more ideas toward it. But ultimately I just have to be quiet, and she'll tell me what I need to know when I need to know it. That and all the stuff that was in the last video, like she's like, this is how it happens, this is how you're pulled out, all this stuff. Yeah, she's telling me that for a reason. She never told me that before, so we're definitely in the area. There was something interesting I saw. I think I screenshotted some. I can't show a bunch of stuff from that site because it's like a paid site, but maybe I can put like a little clip or two. It just stood out to me as interesting. I forget what he was looking at, but it was talking about like how the soul is attached to you, or when it's attached to you. And I don't know, it's popping into my head. Maybe it'll mean something to somebody. So I'll throw that here in the end as a curiosity. But other than that, just stay frosty, don't stay panicked, keep doing the work. Like, I feel like when it's like really time, she'll make a bigger thing of it. I can't really tell what she's doing right now. She definitely just showed me a whole ton of crap, but I'm not quite grasping. Maybe we'll just have to wait and see what happens, and then it'll make sense, with the July 15th thing. But I would be expecting something wonky to happen, even if I hadn't heard the Clif High stuff. As soon as I took a look at that astrological thing, I'm like, oh hell. And it matches up to the Clash of the Titans stuff that she was just freaking pointing out to me multiple ways. So yeah, there's something there. I just don't know what yet. Alright, if you want to get in touch with us, energy work, energy penance, all that stuff, clumencreations.etsy.com. Chris and Lumen. See you next time.